Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Legislative Lens Spotlight, Spotlighting State Laws podcast. In today's topic, we're dealing with a very controversial law. It's Senate Bill 14 out of the great state of Texas, which deals with the banning of gender affirming care. Pretty controversial law at its forefront. I can kind of go to the weeds of it here a little bit. Its controversy still continues. It is banning doctors from at the heart of the law here is the ban of puberty blockers and hormone therapy for transgender children going through a process of transition. Um, the law went into effect September 1st. It did go to the Texas Supreme Court, and we'll go through that conversation as well as a result of the Texas Supreme Court hearing and result of it. Now, this law will ban gender affirming care for minors. This includes medication and surgery. It bans transition related care for transgender minors. But Texas families and medical providers spoke at hearings about this and about the treatment and worked really hard with multiple amendments and things like that. And just overall, the law worked its way through the judicial process in the state court. The next potential overall, just going through the law itself, and I'm trying to break this down, and I'm sorry for the pause there, but just the kind of the way this is going here, it's that it penalizes the doctors, and it causes significant monetary bans and or licensing forfeitures to the doctors that perform said procedures and things like that. It will also allow the state to revoke medical licenses to doctors who provide treatment like puberty blockers or hormone therapy to minors to transition a child's biological sex. All right, so I think at the forefront of what the bill is, it's a topic that needs to be discussed further in this country, and it's a very difficult one. It's not comfortable, but most things that need to be done aren't comfortable. But I want to kind of go into the timeline here. This law was passed in September of 2023. We're now in January 24. So here's what I want you guys to understand. It was appealed to the Texas Supreme Court in late August before the law was enacted. Okay. The Texas Supreme Court allowed said law to take effect on Friday, setting up Texas to be the most populous state with such a restriction on transgender children. Last week, a state district judge ruled the pending law violated the rights of transgender children the week before and their families to seek appropriate medical care and violated doctors' ability to follow well-established evidence-based medical guidelines under threat of losing their license. The judge issued a temporary injunction that was lifted by the Supreme Court 7 days later. So a district judge ruled in the favor of the children and the families, and then a week later it was struck down. So very difficult law. I would assume, based on the way that this judiciary goes here in the state of Texas, I forecast this probably potentially going to the Supreme Court of the United States on the federal district side and potentially the Court of Appeals as it works through the process. It is not an easy conversation. But I will say this, the Supreme Court of Texas refused to grant an emergency request for temporary relief. And that's how pretty much it stopped. The Travis County was the original district court. And that's when it went to the Supreme Court of Texas. And the ACLU worked through a lawsuit there. I think this can be I think we'll all be very more remiss here that this law at its forefront, this like Senate bill and the other ones dealing with sexually explicit and the transgender community, it's going to be very unique. So I think we as a society have to take a pause and pump the brakes a bit and kind of get itself back into the understanding of what we're about to witness. What this law does is, yes, it does protect children, and it automatically does, because it stops parents from allowing their children to be going through this procedures that I think universally, collectively, as a society, we can understand as adults that children go through development as a whole differently, and some of us are not even completely developed yet when we get to it being adults. So I think that's a very well of adult decision, and I think it's important that those issues and those things go in the discovery and any mental health matters and things like that are worked through by the individual. And I, as a host, can't really dive too well into the medical side of it, but I can understand the hesitation from the state. But I also can understand the reasoning for some things. Okay, appreciate the listen. It's a very difficult conversation, guys. I think everyone can understand that, but I think collectively, society as a whole can understand that. Let the child kind of develop their identity and their mental health and things along those lines, because as difficult as it is to navigate through society, I think we can all agree with that universally. So I think a decision to go in transition is one that is made when you become an adult, and you can make those decisions at that time. I don't think it's a good idea myself personally to even fathom or even think about those decisions as a child. And I understand that children do go some through some identity crisis. I think people do have dysmorphia. People have phobias. Some people have mental health issues, and they need to kind of resolve those and work through those. And I think a lot of this is, I think it's a protection mechanism until they become adults. I appreciate the listen as always. Thank you for joining me. Feel free to continue to listen to all the laws that are passed here on the 88th legislature out of the great state of Texas. And thank you, and have a great rest of your week.